I'm Bob Roses. I'm the current state representative for District 19. I've served 2 years. I've lived in Muldoon for 40 years. My wife and I built our house on East 2nd in 1968. We're still in the house. I taught school for 20 years as a high school math teacher. We also own our own business in the Muldoon area. We had a Muldoon car wash that we built and operated for 27 years before we sold. We also had a construction company with my wife's father. And we built probably 20, 25 houses in the Muldoon area over the years. And a lot of that rental property we still have. And so been a very permanent fixture of this district for 40 years. And so I would like to continue to represent District 19.
All right. Would you like to respond in place of Mr.
First off, I'm not Pete Peterson. My name is David Dunsmore. I think many of you know me. I'm Pete's campaign manager on this campaign. And Pete's sorry he couldn't make it. We just had some miscommunication. He thought it was going to be on Monday, but luckily he was able to get hold of me, and I appreciate it. But I will speak for Pete. Pete's a 27-year resident of Anchorage. He's a longtime coach in the Napa Valley Little League. He's owned businesses here in Anchorage for over 20 years, and he's running for the State House to represent Northeast Anchorage and Muldoon because he believes, we need someone who's on our side of issues when it comes to energy relief and education.
All right, thank you for being here, David, in this place. So why don't we open it up? Mr. Roses, would you like to go first? And
sure.
Would you have a question? I'm sure you would have a question that you'd like to ask of Pete, and we'll see if David is able to answer that.
Actually, I want to ask about 20, but I'll start with the first one. I have a campaign flyer that you guys have been distributing starting, I think, yesterday, which says, "Shame on Bob Roses for running a negative, personal, and misleading campaign against a good man and neighbor. And why would the incumbent politician Bob Roses attack our neighbor Pete? And you want to have a positive, for people first campaign." I have in front of me every one of the brochures that I've used in this campaign, and a copy of my TV commercials, and I'd love to hand these to you, and I'd like to have you tell me exactly where these are made.
Yes, I believe one of your flyers, and I got a call from Pete last weekend, and he had it on his door. A flyer that was implying that he didn't live in the district and that he did not meet the eligibility requirements to run for office. Talking about, we reacted to the house in South Anchorage. And as you well know, Bob, the truth is Pete exceeds every single requirement to run for the state house in this district. Pete has been a community leader in Northeast Anchorage, both as a coach of the Napa Valley Little League and as a member of the Community Council Board of Directors. And Pete told me that when he moved into his house on Turf Court a year and a half ago, he never imagined that he'd be running for the state house this year. He had ran for the state house in 2004, and it's a lot of work, as you know, and he never thought he could do anything of it. But as he talked to his neighbors, he got involved in the Community Council, it was clear that we needed someone in the state house who's on our side.
Okay. And so you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. So in other words, pointing out the fact that he's lived here a year, you consider that there was no inference that he didn't live here, that he wasn't qualified, not in any way. Simply stated that Pete Petersen has lived in this district a year and a half. And yes, he has served on the Community Council since April. I've served on the Community Council since they were started under Mayor Fink back in the 80s. And I can tell you right now that I've been the president twice. I've been on the board of directors for probably a total of 12 years. And so qualifying by being on the Community Council for a couple of months is not the same as 40 years.
Okay, I just want to ask a follow-up question for myself. I can't vote for either candidate or for Mr. Principal. So I guess I'd like to know, what is the qualification for how long you have to live in the district to be able to run?
1 year.
Okay, so and you're not contesting that he's lived for a year and a half?
Not at all.
It was more what you felt like was, an experience question?
No, it had to do with the fact that on his campaign flyers he talks about living in Anchorage for 27 years, operated business for 20 years in the district, in the city. My contrast piece was that if you're going to represent Anchorage, you ought to at least know a little bit about the community. And 40 years of living in this community does not equate to a year and a half in this community. That's the only thing I stated was that he lived here a year and a half.
Okay.
Now, Bob, as I've talked to Pete, Because, he's been going door to door for the last 5 months because he believes that, you shouldn't assume just because you've lived in a place a long time that you understand everything's concerned. And, he's talking to a lot of, he told me, he talked to military families. They've only been here for 6 months, but they feel like they're a part of the community. And they should have every right to have a voice in the community.
Okay, so, sorry. Okay, all right, so now it is your turn to ask a question of Mr. Roses.
Okay, well, I'm going to do my pizza, but I'm going to stick to the issues. One of the most important issues in the last legislative session it was fixing the oil tax that was bought with VECO bribe money. And I know in the past you voted against it, and I know you said you voted against it because of some of the deduction amendments attached to it. One of the deduction amendments you voted against was the thing that would require that any investment that was written off on the oil tax take place in Alaska. Why do you feel the oil company should be allowed to write off investments that take place in Russia or Nigeria or Azerbaijan and not make them invest their money in our state?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. That isn't the way the amendment was phrased. The amendment was phrased that it had to do with expenses that they had involved in production. Let me give you an example. If you only allowed them to deduct things that happen in the state, all the oil rigs that they build outside and bring up here would not be allowed to be deducted. A lot of the engineering work that's done in Houston would not allow to be deducted. A lot of the geophysical work that would be done in Houston would not allow to be deducted. Those are legitimate expenses. It was an unfair business practice to push through a piece of legislation that did exactly what they were doing. Let me tell you what it did. That piece of legislation that I voted against made it retroactive taxes. They had already filed all their taxes for 2006 or 2007, all of them. This tax went retroactive back an entire year. That would be the equivalent of you, under this next president, whoever it is, decides, okay, everybody, you know what, I'm going to go and change the tax laws, but I'm going to make it retroactive a whole year, so all of you need to refile again, and you all need to pay more.
So is this
Unfair.
So is this the same retroactive tax? Wasn't that introduced by President McGuire? Is that the same one we're speaking of?
It was a tax. I don't remember who did the amendment, but Alicia McGuire's in the Senate. I'm in the House. I voted against the House amendment.
Okay, and then the retroactive tax that went back 6 months.
Went back a year.
That could have gone back a year, and it went back to the beginning of the fiscal year, though, correct?
Right.
Which was the 1st of July.
And it also limited the deduction to 3% above what the expenses were for 2006, when every one of the international experts told us that they knew costs were going to go up at least 100%. We knew they went up 100. We only allowed them to deduct 3% above what they did in 06. There's not a business in this state that would stand for that kind of, regressive tax, retroactive, and limiting to what your expenses were from the previous year.
Well, I didn't ask
absolutely
about
unfair.
I didn't ask about the retroactivity. I asked about the why you voted to allow them to deduct expenses that are going to create jobs, as you say, in Houston and not in Alaska. This is just a point where Pete and Mr. Roses disagree. Pete wants to only give them a tax break for engineering services if they hire an Alaskan engineer to do it. If Pete wants to create Alaskan jobs, not Texan jobs, not Russian jobs, not Azerbaijani jobs, Alaskan jobs.
Thank you. Well, first of all, one way you want to guarantee that you're going to create jobs is to make sure you stifle productivity. That's the quickest way to eliminate jobs. And if you go and talk to some of the producers and find out what happened after this ACES tax passed, BP laid down 2 rigs that they were planning on standing up this winter. Talk to others and see how many they laid down. 500 jobs each rig.
All right, so I think we should go back and let them ask one more question. So, Mr. Roses, would you have another question that you would like to ask Pete that Pete's not here to answer?
Sure, but